Okay, welcome everyone to the launch party for Made in LA Volume 3, Art of Transformation. We have a collection of editors and contributors who made this book possible here with us tonight, and we're going to introduce them and their stories and take some questions at the end. If you're here on Zoom, then you can share your questions via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Or if you are joining us via YouTube, you can pop your comments and questions in the chat and we will get to them towards the end. So I want to acknowledge just at the start that we are in strange and difficult times, and the fact that we're here and celebrating some of our art is frankly incredible and amazing, and it's getting me through this. So thank you for making the time and for being here. What I've asked each of our contributors to do today is to introduce themselves and to share a little bit about their stories and how they connect with our theme of making art of transformation. And we'll get into that in a moment. But first, I want to introduce and welcome Allison Rose. She is one of the founding members of the Made in LA Indie Author Cooperative. She designed the beautiful cover to our book this year, which is flying off shelves all around. And we'll talk about where you could pick up a copy a little bit later. But Allison also has a story in our book this year, which will knock your pants off and maybe light them on fire. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you. So this is our third volume of the Made in LA anthology, and they all have different subtitles / themes. The first one was Stories Rooted in the City of Angels, and the second one is Chasing the Elusive Dream. And then this one is Art of Transformation. And so what we really wanted to capture with this anthology was how this very unique city that is a melting pot of cultures and backgrounds and experiences becomes what is the taste of LA, if you will. It's such a melting pot and such an ever-changing place that is a very unique and fun place to be an author, to be an artist, to be a creative anything. You can absorb so many different, experiences to put into your art. And so that's what we were wanting to capture with this anthology, because all of our contributors are either live in Los Angeles, grew up in Los Angeles, or at least spent a serious amount of time here. And so each of their perspectives of what it is to be an Angelino is very different. And we wanted to celebrate that in this particular anthology. And I believe that we did. And it's very exciting to also, and frustrating to also be a part in this very strange time of the state of our world, where we are having to adjust to who we are as Angelinos and how we reconnect and how we continue to share stories and experiences across boundaries and cultures and experiences. So it's kind of taken a life of its own now, I believe. We can interpret it in a completely different way than we were when we wrote it. We put it together. So yes, Art of Transformation.
Thank you, Allison. And I shared this a little bit earlier today that when I wrote that we were going to move through each of our contributors in anthological order, that it gave me a surprising amount of joy. And it did. I don't know why. It just does. So with that said, the first story that appears in Art of Transformation is by Noriko Nakata, who is here with us, and she's going to share her story or introduce her story to us now. And so everyone welcome Noriko, please.
Thank you so much, Cody, and the rest of the team for including me in this special book. So my story is titled Infamy, and it captures a moment just before and just after the whole world changes. So that's a transformation I think we're all pretty familiar with right now. It feels like we're living right in the midst of another one of these transformations. And I'm a little bit obsessed with these moments. Like I'm always on the watch, like, oh my gosh, did everything just change? And I feel like I'm having to recalibrate right now because everything seems to be changing about every 2 days. So March seems like a long time ago. And that was when we were originally kind of planning this launch. And so it's kind of funny to be here and to be talking about stories in these new ways that have now become almost normal for us writers and readers in this midst of transformation. But this story captures a moment surrounding Pearl Harbor. And it's set in the Japanese American community of West LA in the Sawtelle area. And I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs about the night that the news broke. They were having a birthday party the night of Pearl Harbor. And so this is when, after the news that Pearl Harbor is set in on this Japanese American family. Natasha helps her mother clear the table, carrying uneaten teriyaki and inari and tsunemono, and the beautiful birthday cake cluttered with unlit candles inside. Tonight, on the night of Hiro's birthday, LA is cloaked in darkness, and he never has the chance to make a wish. But before they head to bed that night, Natasha calls her brother into the backyard. No streetlights, no porch lights, no headlights from passing cars. It is a darkness they have never seen in their city, and when they peer up, the sky is a blanket of stars. You could wish on a falling star, since you didn't get to blow out the candles on your cake. Hiro gives his little sister's shoulders a squeeze, and they watch the star-scattered sky until he catches one. He closes his eyes and makes a wish. He tells no one. So that's just a little bit of a taste of Infamy. I hope you all check out Infamy. Your stories are all brilliant. Thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you, Noriko. I love that story from the first time we read it before all of this. And then it kept coming back to it during, as things evolved. And I'm like, this really, it's a timeless story that really resonates now. So thank you for that. And it kicks off the anthology. So that's pretty fucking awesome. So I'm now pleased to welcome AP Thayer. And AP, this is, I think you've been sharing the news online. This is your second reading ever?
Yeah. My first one was last night. This is my second one.
So claps to you.
Thank you.
And take it away.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me. It was really great to be a part of this. I met you guys shortly after the second one dropped, and I don't know, I really wanted to be in the third one, and I'm glad to be a part of this. And my story, the transformation of my story is a little more depressing than some of the other ones maybe. It's actually a failed transformation. And I took parts of what I've seen in the time that I've lived in Los Angeles and my own life here in Los Angeles. I've managed stages for 10 years. I saw a lot of like the industry, and it's a lot of heartbreak. And so I decided to play with that a little bit and turned it into horror. So I'm just gonna do a quick reading of the beginning, and then you guys can read the rest of it in the book. He takes a couple shots before leaving for the club. Pops the mollies in the car ride over. 3 because that's how many it even takes. 3 because that's how many it takes to even feel it anymore. 2 more hide in a small pouch in his crotch. Another shot at the club. Another capsule within an hour of getting through the doors. Soon after, he's shaking the last one in the valley between a thumb and index finger and snorting it up his nose. There was a time when the stuff made him genuinely happy. The acrid taste of the postnasal drip fools him into a shadow of that happiness. The first time had been beautiful. He'd been breathless. Now he just grinds his teeth and sweats too much. He needs some K to balance everything out. Just a bump off someone's car key, then a hit from someone's vape, another drink, and adios, motherfucker. He pretends it's a delicate balance. In reality, he's only saying yes to anything that makes him believe he's interesting, living hard and fast like a Hollywood screenwriter is supposed to. Anything that sells the self-deception. I'll stop there.
Can't hear you, Cody. Oh.
Sorry. Thank you, AP. File that story under instant horror classic. And Yeah, I think one of the undercurrents in this volume are those dark moments and dark turns, which your story has, and the next contributor story has a similar kind of vibe going on to it. So I'm going to welcome Rosalind Tukulski. I may have said your last name wrong. I apologize if I did.
Perfect.
And Rosalind has some guests here from quite a long way away, I believe. Take it away, Rosalind.
Thank you. I would like to give a shout out to my friends from Ithaca and out of town, and also my sister who set her alarm clock for 3:30 a.m. so she could watch me from Cape Town. Hi. So I'm going to read from my young adult thriller, Tell Me Your Name. I'm so excited that the story is in the collection. And thank you, Cody. You are amazing, the work that you've done for this. So Tell Me Your Name. It's a young adult story. In the middle of Malevolent, the doorbell rings. I'm alone, stretched out on my king-size bed with cards scattered everywhere. I'm assiduously making sentences with words every genius should know, all neatly typed on my mother's vocabulary flashcards. Seriously, like my bedroom in our new condo is obscenely capacious. Or obstreperous children should be broiled and served with French fries, stuff like that. Melinda is so freaking obsessive when it comes to me. It's dark outside, February in Pasadena, tall, skinny palm trees doing the funky skeleton in the wind. Creepy. The weather is ostensibly perfect, but personally, I miss the snow in Rochester. The bell rings again. Ding dong, ding dong. What's taking you so long? Open the goddamn door. When I open the door, a whoosh of cold air sweeps in. The guy on the doorstep looks like he's 16 or 17 tops with a button-down shirt and tan pants. Good evening, ma'am, he says in a low, polite voice. I'm sorry to bother you, but I lost my job last week and I haven't eaten anything for 2 days. Could you help me out? I'm speechless. No one has ever called me ma'am. I may look like a sweet little lady, but when I write stories, there's only one question in my mind, and that is, what can go wrong? So in my story, I have a young, poor boy who comes to the door of a rich young girl and asks her for money. What could possibly go wrong? No spoilers, but I will tell you what the transformation in my novel, in my story is. If that boy crosses the threshold, he'll never be the same again. Read the story to get the rest of it. Good night.
Thank you, Rosalind. Rosalind's story, Tell Me Your Name, is one that you'll want to read more than once. I won't spoil it either, but I'll leave you with that nugget. So next we have Carter Mycroft, who is getting a jump on Halloween.
Yeah.
Love it. Let me put you on spotlight. Here you are. Welcome, Carter, and tell us about your story, Shark News.
Sure. Yeah, Cody must have played a prank on me by telling me that it was a costume party and not anyone else. So my story in Made in LA is called Shark News, and it is a story about a young man who moves to a new neighborhood for no real justified reason and gets involved in all kinds of weird stuff involving shortwave radio and deep sea sharks and Los Angeles's elevator inspection protocols. And it's kind of just a story about how when you're new to LA or new to a certain part of LA, things can feel kind of cosmic and confusing, and like there are all these weird machinations going on that you don't understand. And if you kind of insert yourself just a little bit closer, you start to learn a little bit, and that can be good or that can be bad. Or it can just be strange. So I'll read a little bit from the beginning. And this is right after our hero, Hunter, gets his first apartment in Venice. He spent the first week on a mattress on the floor, playing video games and texting his ex and ordering pizza from chain restaurants. Eventually, he worked up the motivation to explore the neighborhood. He wandered Abbot Kinney past expensive restaurants, psychedelic murals, surf shops that only sold clothes, and weed stores that charged 5 times what he was used to paying back in the valley. He smoked a joint around the Canal District, drawing sneers from folks who sipped wine outside multi-million-dollar homes with signs in the yards reading, "Save Venice, no shelters." The canals made him nervous. He'd hoped in Venice he would meet some people like himself, carefree types who liked to have fun, the sort of people he remembered seeing when he'd visited as a kid. Artists and hippies and surfers and pretty girls who smoked cigarettes. So far, all he'd seen was rich people who didn't wear shoes. He hung around the beach, drifting past the street vendors with their caricatures and irreverent t-shirts, the county fair-style food shacks, the legendary skate park. He watched the skaters for a few hours. He'd tried skateboarding in high school, and he'd been bad at it. There were 8-year-olds here who looked like Olympic gold medalists by comparison. He tried chatting with some guys around his age who stood at the railing, wondering if this might be where he'd find his people. Everyone he talked to was visiting from another state. He woke up the next morning to a call from his dad. "Where did you say you moved?" "Venice Beach." "What the hell, Hunter? You're supposed to be saving money. You're supposed to be going back to school." "I just needed to get away for a while. Focus on myself, you know?" "Well, forget about us helping with your rent. Not unless you get a full-time job. Otherwise, you need to move back home." They had a long argument and Hunter lost. He'd never worked full-time before and was not excited about the prospect, but maybe it wouldn't be so bad. It could be a good way to meet people at least. And I'll stop there. That's kind of where it gets set up. So yeah, that's basically what I have going on with my story. It kind of spirals from there into all kinds of weird stuff. And yeah, huge thank you to Cody and Allison and Sarah and everyone for including me in this volume. I'm a big fan of Made in LA since I saw the presentation at Last Bookstore last year. I think it was last year. Time is kind of meaningless at this point. But yeah, happy to be included and loved reading all the other stories, and thanks to everybody for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Carter. I remember I've been like seeing some of the photos from last year, from about September to this time last year. We were in a kind of marathon book tour. We did events at Skylight, at Stories, at Book Show, at Last Bookstore. And looking back, I'm like, wow, I really left the house a lot. But also like, wow, how do we like, you know, how do you introduce a book to people when you're really not out there as much? So we're doing more events like this, and it's really, you know, it's great to have you all here to celebrate with us. And excited that you know, that we, after that Last Bookstore event, we went out and had drinks across the street downtown LA, not knowing how precious that was going to be. But I'm glad to have made that connection. So thank you, Carter. And we're going to have a brief interlude, but we've got one more writer to hear from first. Eric Gonzalez Kramer is now spotlighted so that everyone can see and hear you and your story, which I will say, you know, I don't cry a lot. I didn't cry when reading it, but damn, I got misty-eyed.
I do cry while reading it. I hope that's not horribly conceited of me. But yeah, I'm Eric Gonzalez Kramer. I wrote the short story, The Good Life of Duke. And it's a story about isolation, loss, acceptance, and a very special dog. So I'll go ahead and just read a really short snippet from the very beginning. All you need to know is Tom, a lonely Lyft driver adrift in LA, is on the sidewalk when he sees a dog get hit by a car at night. And I worked my arms under the dog's sharp hips and bony shoulders and gingerly picked him up, retreating to the sidewalk. Shuffling over to my car, I laid him in the back seat and jumped behind the steering wheel. I swiveled into the road and raced away. My adrenaline was pumping so hard I hadn't even given a thought to where I would go. Before I knew it, I was southbound on the 101, speedometer hovering around 90. During rush hour, I never bothered to slog through clogged LA arteries like the 101. But in the middle of the night, I sped past all but the most pedal-happy drivers. I plunged down an exit ramp near Elysium Park and wove through blocks that randomly alternated between million-dollar homes and lackluster apartment buildings, before parking in front of one of the latter and carrying the dog inside. The dog stirred when I entered my studio apartment. Kicking a box of clothes aside, I placed him on my carpet and stepped back. His eyes slowly opened. "Are you all right?" I asked. The dog's left ear lifted slightly. "Yeah," the dog said. So that is how Tom meets Duke. As I said, a very special dog. And it's definitely, I think we're all drawn to stories where the main characters transform. And I definitely think these two characters learn from each other and transform over the course of this story. And I've been learning, I wrote this when I was going through a period of isolation and loss and needing acceptance. And I kind of wrote this story and incorporated a wise old dog that my family used to own. His name was not Duke, but he's very much inspired by that dog. And I think many people obviously are dealing with increased isolation and varying levels of loss, and we're all kind of grappling with that. And so I kind of find myself learning all over again the things I was trying to teach myself when I first wrote this short story. So thank you, Cody, and the rest of the Made in LA writers team for including this short story. I think it's more relevant than ever, and I hope everyone watching reads it in the anthology and enjoys it and learns from it too.
Thank you, Eric. And big shout out to the copy of Made in LA Volume 1 just over your shoulder.
my personal Volume 3 copy has not arrived yet, so I needed something up here.
Exactly. And I saw, so we're going to have a brief interlude. I saw on YouTube that some of our fans who we usually meet at the Festival of Books every year are watching on YouTube. So shout out to all of you. Thank you for finding us online. We miss you. We look forward to seeing you again. I'm reminded of Dawn, who might be our #1 super fan, who literally fought an older man off to get the last copy of, I think it was Volume 2.
I think it was Volume 1.
Volume 1.
First year. Yep.
Right. And then she came back the next year.
She came back. Yep. And then
she is our #1 fan. So wherever you are, Dawn, if you're here, great. Sending you our love. I do want to say where you can find our book. So if you go to madeninlawriters.com, we have a list of all the places you can order it. Bookshop is one of those places. Bookshop.org is where you can buy the book and also support local bookstores. You can go a step further if you order it from Skylight Books or Stories, Books and Cafe, or Chaucer's Books, which is a bookstore in Santa Barbara. Those are all places you can pick up a copy. And then, if you're into ebooks, you can also get those. But I hope we've, made you a little bit thirsty to read more thus far. So again, that was madeninlawriters.com. With that, I'm going to introduce the next author, who is not currently living in LA, but has spent many a year here, and I think is now joining us, from afar. And Barry, welcome. Tell us about your story.
So first of all, I'm a third generation San Angelino. My grandfather came to Los Angeles in 1907. My father was born there in 1910. And my son currently lives in Los Angeles. So we've had 4 generations there. And even though I've lived in Asia for the last 25 years, Tokyo the last 20, LA is still my home, and I still think of it fondly and try to get back, except for this year, 6 to 8 times a year. But my story is, if you were to put it in a kind of a genre, would be more of a police procedural. And what I tried to do is, with my main character, Parnell, who's the narrator, and I'll read a short piece of his to give you an idea of what he's like. kind of a straight-laced Sergeant Friday type guy, and the story sees him sort of change. Maybe not do the most morally correct thing, but does what he feels is the right thing, and that's all that counts. But first of all, before I read it, what I want to do is, Cody, thank you for taking the interest in my story. And I have to tell, it's great to be in the company of all of you. And certainly it's a double honor and a double thrill, for a 72-year-old new writer. So I really appreciate the opportunity. So this is towards the front of my story. And Enrico, this is a nod to the Dodgers here. So this is Sergeant Parnell at the beginning of the story. The Dodgers had blown a 2-run lead in Game 3 of the National League playoffs, and the Giants scored 4 in the ninth to win the game 6-4 along with the pennant. The Dodgers choked, but I think they lost the series in Game 1. They pitched this Jewish fellow named Koufax and lost 8-0. He throws fire, but he's a little edgy on control and gets hurt a lot. In my opinion, they ought to dump him before the '63 season starts. The phone. It's always the phone that brings you out of orbit. I picked up on the second ring. Parnell, homicide. I looked up at my partner, Ed Harbaugh, just as he stuffed the last bite of his peanut butter sandwich in his mouth. Must be 5 o'clock. My watch verified my partner's affinity to routine. Ed and I were up for the next case, and this call was it. In LA, you didn't have long to wait when you were on deck. I scribbled down the facts as they machine gunned in my ear. Blue Sky Flight 741 from Idlewild to LA. Passenger dead in his seat. No obvious sign of trauma. Respond, Blue Sky Terminal 42. I hung up the phone and ripped my notes from the pad. Ed, swallow. We have to get to LAX. And I just wanted to add to one thing too is, in my reading, I always like reading things that have the location as a character, and that's also what I tried to do in the story. But again, Cody, thank you very much, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Barry. And yes, we love when the city shows up as a character. That's kind of sort of where we got our start. So it was a treat to come across your story, and I especially love, with Infamy, with your story, there's this historical thread where we get to see LA at kind of different points in its evolution, which is really cool. So thank you, Barry. Up next, we have Andrea and her story, Empty Glass, and tell us all about it.
Hi, so I'm Andrea Otten, and I love LA. I'm not from LA, and neither is the character in my story, Empty Glass. But first, I just wanted to say that from March until now, we've all had such a transformation, even the 8 inches of hair that some of us are sporting now. But I just like the way that we've still tried to stay the family that we would have been if we could have been live and having those drinks after, story. So I first saw Made in LA when I went to see my buddy Andre Hardy read in the first anthology. And I remember watching and saying, I want that someday. So this is a really big thrill. Okay. So the story is a story of transformation because the character is a Midwesterner and, the dream to come to Hollywood, to come to LA. And I always say, you come with dreams and you figure it out or you fall. So that's really the theme of the story that I have. And it's a story of transformation from life to loss and possibly death. So I'm just going to read you just a small bit. And also the transformation of this character is from emotional dysregulation and sort of frenetic to real clarity and calm in a very strange moment to find that. Breathing slower, she felt thin and light, a palm frond bending in the breeze, inside spinning, gin toxic and putrid. A shard that had fallen away from her broken glass caught a nearby candle's flame. Izzy smoothed her hand over it, scooped the triangle into her palm, and gently formed a fist to shield it from the world. Finally, she sighed lower, her solar plexus calming. I'm okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Already they'd backed up and turned into their own lives. And there she was, hot-faced and humiliated, innards splayed outside the circle where she'd landed again. I'll run to the Mercado and get us more gin. She'd bring back extra bottles, top shelf, tweak her makeup, maybe add cat eye lines. New determination pulled her onto her feet and down the side stairs and wide, confident steps. Renewed, clasping her keys in one hand and the shard in the other, she pinched her purse close to her ribs. A woman stood under the melon streetlight, lean, muscled, and tall for LA. She was waving a cell phone. Her baby peered out from a stroller, and Izzy stopped walking and offered a smile to the mother and child. "Is this your SUV?" the woman said. "Hi, yes." Izzy held her smile steady, but her stomach lurched as she wondered, have I met you before? This woman, her baby, no memory clicked.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. It's like we've come full circle. And what you said about death, you know, it makes a good transition, because at some point in the spring, we noticed as we were, you know, putting them in order, and as Gaby and Allison and Sarah and I were kind of going through the stories again, we're like, I think every single one of these stories has death as a moment or a plot element or a theme, like strongly. And I had that realization kind of at the same time I was doing a radio show with our next contributor, AS Youngless. So we were on Big Blend Radio together, and they were talking, this was like maybe back in March or
it was right before.
Yeah, it was crazy. They were, you know, they were asking us about this, and we're like, yeah, who knows? Anyway, here's AS Youngless.
Hello, everyone. I am AS Youngless. This is the second anthology of Made in LA. I was in the last one. I'm sorry. For some reason, I didn't realize I was going to be next, so I was kind of just staring at all the other authors in daydream land, thinking of their stories. So yes, this is the second time I've been in one of the Made in LA anthologies. And in this one, I wrote a story called Unwanted Gifts. And it was inspired because I live on the West Side in West Adams, Baldwin Hills area. And I was watching a lot of Twilight Zone, and just thinking about taking strange, weird stories and plopping them in my neighborhood, which is very active all the time, like most of LA. There's people out tonight, it's quiet, but I also have the windows shut so that you guys can't hear anything. But there's people out and about, and we have these kids. I've been watching this kid across the street learn how to skateboard all summer. He's amazing now, but at the beginning of the pandemic, not so much. So, I mean, there's a bonus. He got to practice every day for 7 months. But my story is about two kids in my neighborhood who are walking home one day, and there's this weird flash. And I actually didn't have a section picked out to read because I didn't realize we were going to be reading. So I'm just going to talk about my transformation. And in the story, as everything happens, as paranoia starts growing because they find this object and it makes them feel weird and they don't know why. But then there's one moment at the very end where one of the characters named May makes a decision that she has to live with forever. And was it the right decision? She's not sure, but it completely transforms and changes her life. And she's just a kid. I mean, I think she's 14. So it's a very early age, maybe a unintentional bump into that coming of age. Suddenly you're not a kid anymore because you did this, and now you don't get to be that innocent anymore. So if you would like to check it out, it's in the third volume, and it's called Unwanted Gifts.
Thank you, AS. We're moving to Gaby Lorino, and I should do like a little more of an introduction. So Gaby's one of our co-editors. She was with us at the Festival of Books the first time we were there even before we had an anthology, actually, when it was just, some writers trying to say hi and shill our books. So welcome, Gaby.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, everyone. We were actually all together when people started asking us, where are your stories about LA? And that's what sparked this whole thing, these 3 beautiful books that we have. And I really appreciate everyone's hard work, getting back to us, working on the stories, changing things that need to be changed so that people who just are readers will totally get what's going on. And I've had a great time doing it. My story is called Star-Crossed. It's about 2 very good friends that know each other throughout life and apparently can't shake each other. They just keep being in each other's orbit no matter what. And the quote that made me think of this story is right here. Hopefully it's showing up correctly on your screen. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So I'm going to read the very beginning of the story to set it up. And then if you're interested, I hope you'll keep on reading. Star-Crossed, July 2017. Jen knew plenty of people from high school, but Tristan was the one who kept popping up year after year, place after place. He drifted through SoCal, showing up every few months or so with a different gig and a different phone number. Whenever she asked him where he'd been, he just laughed. As Jen sat on the park bench shaded by palms next to the hostess station at Foxy's Diner, her phone buzzed. There was a text from her best friend, Danny. You should Google Tristan before you see him. Crap, Jen whispered as she moved the phone into the shade. She did some search engine magic with Tristan's full name and found a listing with the LA County jail system. Damn it, not again, she muttered. She could feel the heat rise on her face. For a while after they met, age 16 at Estancia High School, Jen had recurrent dreams about Tristan. Nothing scary or sexy, but it was remarkable in that she knew a bunch of other stoners who surfed or skated, and she did not dream about them. In the dream, she and Tristan would be in an alley with a white blue street lamp shining down on them. Jen would walk by and notice Tristan sitting on a low concrete wall with darkness behind him. There was always a party going on nearby, somewhere in the dark. They talked in those dreams about school, people, music, and movies, nothing of importance, but the conversation flowed. When it came time for her to leave, he stayed on his wall, never moving from it. The day after the dream, she would see Tristan at school, wave at him, and move on with her day, vaguely aware that she knew him better through her dreams than in real life.
Thank you, Gaby. And what's really cool is looking at your background, I can see some familiar patterns. For those of you who've been following our Instagram, which is a whole saga, one of the great things that Gaby has done for us with the launch of this book is do like a mini tarot reading for each story. And we've got all of that up there in terms of all of the cool cards. So thank you, Gaby, for doing that.
You're welcome.
According to my list, I'm next. And so of course I'm gonna just get super awkward and nervous.
Would you like me to introduce you?
Yeah, Gaby should introduce you.
I'm good. So I'm going to talk about Call Us Home. I have a story in here which anytime I sit down to write short fiction, for some reason it skews towards urban fantasy and creepy, dark, weird fiction, and I'm okay with that. And this one was a fun story to write because it basically it's structurally it's a vortex where it has these 5 characters who are seemingly disparate, but when their lives are derailed and start to unravel and transform in a really negative way, they get drawn closer and closer together until finally, they come together in this crisis where the LA apocalypse is underway. And so part of the fun of writing this was like, how bad could it get? another fun part of writing this was that I got to revisit some of the characters I had written about in the past, which are, I mean, they're, what can I say? They live in my head, and it was nice to come back to them. So I'm going to read you just a very short section from Call Us Home. And at this point, it's in the point of view of the character of Salt, who some of you may remember from Salt in the Hellmouth, a story in volume 1. I smell meat. I never cook meat at home. I peek my head out the front door, and the smell is even stronger, spiced with sulfurous, boozy ketones. What do you do when you smell the apocalypse? You follow your nose. I grab my bag and head out to a bike share station that materialized overnight last month near the Red Line station at Vermont and Beverly. I take the line north 2 stops and circle around the Barnsdall Hill, giving it a wide leeway since thar be Munsters. Elsbeth Barker's first and last illustrated novel, Frank Lloyd Wright and the Charmed Menagerie of Hollyhock House, should be required reading. I reach a bungalow in Los Feliz that looks familiar. A baby witch here needed some help a few months ago, as I recall. She was like a magnet for power. There are police cars and crime tape marking off the neatly kept lawn from a matching plot next door. The investigating officer, who I know fairly well, sees me and comes over. She gives me the rundown. There's some blood and a lot of weird witch stuff in the backyard, but no victim, no body, no sign of foul play, aside from some blood on the grass. She leads me around the back where the meat scent is overwhelming, and I see clearly on the grass a message: call us home. When I point it out, the officer raises an eyebrow. She doesn't see it. My mission is now clear. I've got to find the source of all this crazy before it's too late. And part of what I did with this story was kind of dip into a little bit of LA noir, you know, with the detective and with the crime and what's going on. And of course, when I get involved in a trope, I have to kind of explode it from the inside out. So things don't go as planned, but definitely Salt is on the trail of something. And if you want to know what it ends up being, then you should probably read the story in volume 3. You should read volume 3 for many reasons. And the next reason is an amazing story by a very dear writer friend who I'm so happy to be working with throughout these anthology series. But I'll let Allison Rose talk about her story, Night of Fires, and take it away, Allison.
Hello, thank you everybody for coming. As Cody said, it's been a very fun few anthologies to release and get out, and been on the edge of our seats waiting for this one to come out. So we appreciate you all sticking with us. So my story, Night of Fires, it actually does focus quite a bit on transformation. One of the themes that I love to explore with characters is how traumatic events will affect a person's trajectory, but also their own interpretation of that experience. And you have 2 people in the same experience, and they're going to have a different interpretation of what happened. And what's can be interesting is how we choose to change that experience for ourselves, whether it's to help ease the pain, or it's to help ease guilt, or what have you. And so my story, Night of Fires, is about 2 sisters who are reliving the night that their childhood apartment building burned down. So one of the sisters, the eldest sister, who is the narrator of the story, she was not there that night. She snuck out to go for a sleepover, and the younger sister had managed to escape, and both of their parents died in the fire. So the eldest sister decided to write a memoir about her experience. And she's, at the beginning of the story, been invited by her younger sister, Leah, to be on a journey from what the younger sister's perspective of what happened that night at the fire, in order to kind of beef up her own, second novel. And as it turns out, maybe the experience actually isn't what you think it is, as Catherine, the elder sister, discovered. So I'm going to just read a brief part of it. Leah, who's the younger sister, Leah volunteered little information to all the frenzied, probing investigators who wondered how the 10-year-old escaped unharmed. But I knew her better than they did. At least I knew the version of Leah before the fire. I knew a little sister who begged to be involved, insisted how she was cool enough, brave enough, mature enough to keep a secret. Leah was a decent kid as far as siblings go, but it would have gone completely against my objective to take her with me the night that I officially hit my preteen rebellious streak and snuck out of the apartment to attend a friend's sleepover. I remember her spirited expression crumbling as I slid out of the bedroom window and swung to the balcony and down 2 floors to freedom. I couldn't be sure if Leah had broken faith to betray our pinky swear of silence, but something about that fire forged a more resolute version of my sister, creating an exterior unyielding to the prying authorities. 6 people died in that fire, including both of our parents. Leah would have made 7 had I not woken her in the process of executing my getaway. Thanks to the sleepover, I was nowhere near the scene, a fact that at one point filled me with a sort of survivor's guilt, the kind that gnaws at the back of the mind, begging to be noticed if only to alleviate the irritation. In the time since, I found a way to channel that guilt into a memoir, a stunted and incomplete account, according to the literary review section of Los Angeles Magazine. Those subsequent 17 years should have been enough time for Leah to make peace with her trauma, to find solace in something other than unrelenting bitterness. Instead, her memories fed a growing impatience and a combative temper that compounded to the point of bursting. All this time, Leah dangled her full story inches from the noses of storytellers thirsty for a juicy tale, providing little more than the specifics detailed in the news articles and local blogs. I knew my own side, and I knew what was public record, but I could never crack the code of what Leah knew. Those withheld details were fuel for her emotional conflagration, just as our childhood apartment building had been to the fire. Then, one night, in the middle of a summer heat wave, Leah finally erupted, and I had been invited to capture the moment. So that. Don't think you know where the story is going, because I love a good surprise ending.
And your story builds and builds and builds to that final moment, which is so awesome. So yeah, I feel like people are going to close this book and they're like, where's volume 4? And hopefully, hopefully we've inspired you to read it. Hopefully we've inspired some of the writers out there to be part of this. We love reading stories based in Los Angeles. And Gaby will say a little bit more about kind of our plans next. We do have time for a couple questions if anyone has one. And I know I'm just taking a look over at the YouTube channel. There's a lot of people watching us there who have found us at the Festival of Books before and who are interested in writing stories for us. So that's cool. But yeah, any questions? I mean, we were last together in March and we had a really long discussion, and here we are again.
I have a question for all of you. Is anybody writing right now? You have new stuff to share? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Short story, volume 4 material?
Maybe. I feel like 1 out of every 3 things I write is set in LA. So, there's always some stuff simmering.
And we are on the cusp of National Novel Writing Month. And I know some of you are participating in that and maybe even like herding cats on that. I hope I hope if you are doing NaNoWriMo, I made a really bad snap decision to participate this year because I got the story nugget just stuck in my brain, and now I've got to write it out. So I'll be there with you.
Can you share what the story idea is, or is it top secret?
No, I can share. It is imagining a world where journalists give up their privacy 100% in order to be trusted sources. And so it's going to be, I think, a little bit of hope punk about how we reestablish trust in information, and the sacrifices that entails.
Cody, we do have one question I see in our Q&A section from Alina Reyes. It is, are you having trouble finding inspiration during these times? Anybody want to answer that?
I'll answer. I have too much inspiration. I don't have any time to write, but I have notebooks everywhere. I have ideas. I have notes on my phone. I have pieces of receipts shoved in wallets. I haven't had this many ideas in a long time. It's because of everything that's going on. There's all, like you were saying, like taking and just trying to figure out what if, and Rosalind was saying that too, what could go wrong? And then looking at this current state in world that we're in and just playing different scenarios. So time is an issue because virtual learning is fun. So I don't have as much time as I would like, but when I do, you guys won't see me for months and months.
I'd love to answer that question too, if I may, just because I'd like to take the opposite stance. I'm glad you've got a lot of inspiration and time, and I've got the exact inverse. I've got a lot of time and very little inspiration. Just there's so much going on in the world. I'm feeling more scatterbrained than usual, trying to keep up with it all and do, the best I can and do my part with the resources I have. So I wanted to jump in just in case the person who asked that question is a writer, and to not make them feel bad about if you don't have inspiration, there is a lot going on, and that's okay.
No, that's very true. That's very true. Right now, it's also very hard because it is so overwhelming. And then you have so much time, you feel like you should be. Well, why aren't I?
Yeah.
So even when I do have time, there's days that I don't write, even if I do, because I'm tired.
Yes.
I'm just levels upon levels of tired.
And for me, more time is not proportional to more pages and good stories.
It's not. It's not at all.
If I can jump in, I've been enjoying revising right now because I think it takes me back to the world of when I was writing before what's going on. So that's felt like, okay, that's a world I know, and that's a place I'd like to insert myself back into. And also I'll be carving and working on a sentence, or I'll have a new idea, and then I'll look over at the kids and I'll be like, please take this speaker wire out of your mouth. Right when you're in the middle of creating, but wow, it is such a challenge. But I'm enjoying that. And then the other thing I'm doing is working with groups, working with friends who write, and us giving each other our stories and doing sort of what I guess I'd call just a makeshift workshop. But that's such a togetherness that I've needed. I'm a super extrovert. So that's helped a lot. And that keeps me writing because I want to be writing with them.
To me, the trickiest part inspiration wise has been having to learn to be able to be creative in one place, which is like the place where you are all the time, I've always done most of my writing when I'm somewhere else, when I displace myself a little bit, either when I'm traveling or even just at a coffee shop or whatever. So having to train myself to be able to sit down and get in the same zone when I'm just at my house at the computer where I do my day job all day anyway. It's that's kind of the struggle for me. And I've made okay progress. I've learned to do it a little bit, but it's it's never as good, and I'm as this whole pandemic situation continues, I get more and more nostalgic for like what Cody was saying. It was just a year ago when everybody was getting together at the bookstore, and I was going out and riding with my friends at wherever all the time, and it's man, it starts to wear on you a little bit. I think that's okay. as creatives, we have to like acknowledge that like these aren't ideal situations and you got to give yourself a break a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I'll jump in for a second. I wouldn't say that my inspiration is up, but because every day is such a routine and a chore, carving out time to write has become almost second nature. I basically have settled into this routine and have been doing the exact same thing for 7 months now, basically. So I've actually been getting a lot of words done, a lot of stories finished, a lot of drafts finished, but it feels super clinical. Like, so I definitely wouldn't say I've been inspired, but I've been productive, I guess.
I agree. Can I speak?
We hear you.
I find that I've done a lot of writing, that the silver lining is that there's just time to write, because so much of what I used to do now happens at home and I just have time to write. One of the benefits of being older, I never thought I'd say this, is your children are grown and there's time to write. I don't have to homeschool people. Don't know how young people are managing with kids. I also wanted to ask Cody, what is the theme of volume 4?
That is a good question, which I'm going to defer because, well, for various reasons, but Gaby's going to talk a little bit about what's coming next. But I did want to say to Noriko, you've written a few times now, I think Breathe and Push, some blog posts and articles about being creative in such a difficult time. I found those very validating.
Oh, thank you so much for reading. Yeah, this week's was Writing Through Despair. And I referenced Alexander Chee, who has a great essay on writing through despair. And yeah, I'm doing National Novel Writing Month with my 8th graders. 158th
Yes.
graders are doing it. You can too. And it really, having to convince them to do it helped convince me that I can do it. So I'm actually doing a little bit of a spin off of the Nakamura family. There's a ghost that lives in the boarding house. And so I'm going to write this year's novel from the ghost's perspective. So we'll see how that goes. I needed to escape to a different world, so I couldn't do realistic fiction right now. It was just too close. So we'll see.
I can't wait to hear that voice. We're running up against the hour, so Gaby has a few reminders to us to close us out. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I want to just add that we're all having to process a lot of things emotionally during this time, whether it's because of social justice issues or health related issues or whatever's come up in our lives. And so we're kind of living it now, and I think we'll probably write it later. But I'm Gaby Larino. For those who don't know, I'm one of the editors for Made in LA Writers. I want to thank everybody who participated today and everybody who tuned in. We really appreciate it on any given day, but especially that you're tuning in now during these very weird times that we're having. If you want to purchase this book or give it to others during the holidays, especially, Cody let us know earlier, but I'm just going to reiterate, you can buy them in person at Skylight Books, at Stories Books and Cafe. Those are in Los Angeles proper. And now Chaucer's Books in Santa Barbara is also carrying Made in LA Art of Transformation. And then I put in the chat box the bookshop.org link to our books so that hopefully if you need it to be delivered, you will use that service. It's good for the little guys, and that's who we are, since we're not the big publishers and big names yet. Of course, we want you to remember to support, even if you don't buy this book, to support local booksellers. It's very important on any given year, especially this year. And another thing that we'll ask, we're going to make a plea to you, is that if you do read this and you do like it, please write a review. A lot of people think, oh, someone else will do it. Hardly anyone does it, but we're small and we're kind of trying to gain momentum. We really appreciate it. We haven't been able to do the events that we always do out at bookstores and at the Festival of Books. We really love interacting with people one-on-one. Can't do that right now, but we appreciate any recommendations you might give to other readers or word of mouth, however you would like. As Cody mentioned earlier, we don't have a theme quite yet, but we are hopeful to announce submissions for Volume 4 next year. Don't ask for anything in the short term, please. We're just happy to have this released today. And then we want you all to stay safe. And thank you very much for your support. And one more thing, we're having a Halloween party tomorrow. Cody's going to take us out and remind you all about that. It's at 4 p.m. Dress to Impress.
4 p.m. tomorrow. So a little bit before the sun goes down, because we don't want to creep you out too bad. And we'll be having a costume ball. There will be a prize for best dressed among the audience. There will be a prize for best dressed among the writers. And I'll keep it creepy and secret until then. And then this is really fun. We'll be doing Mad Libs. So we'll be taking vocab from one story and inserting it into another and seeing what happens, which is, nostalgia's big this year for obvious reasons. We're going to go down that, we're going to ride that train all the way to the end. So we hope that you'll join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. It'll be fun. It'll be cameras on. It might be a little wild. Wear your costumes. And to our writers and co-editors, thank you so much. This has been lovely. It's been a great reason to get us all back together again. I miss you all. And
Miss you too, Cody.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you again soon.
Everybody
Congratulations,
take care.
everybody. Those of you
Thank
who are
you.
not previously published, you are now published authors. Congratulations.
Woo!
Celebrate it.
This is my first fiction.
Yes.
Ooh.
Wait,
This
so
is
who's
my first fiction. This is
awesome?
Yes. Yay. Congratulations. you
first
guys.
ever.
That is so sweet.
It's amazing. So proud of you guys.
Very exciting. Just is.
Thank you and take care.